that's just the plaque for that. So, and then 30 years later, there was a group of saints that I didn't know about. They came from Alabama in 1877, so 30 years later, and they wintered here in Pueblo. And then a lot of those, they were supposed to go over and settle the San Luis Valley. So there's a few of us in the ward that came from the San Luis Valley originally, and so that's kind of an important thing for some of us too. In 1896, that's when they started the Western States Mission, but it was called the Colorado Mission then. And kind of an interesting fact that President Harold B. Lee served as a missionary in the Colorado Springs, Denver area between 1920 and 1922. And then, another thing about this San Luis stake, they were the very first stake in Colorado that was formed, and that was in 1896 too. And they were the 26th stake in the church. And it wasn't until 57 years later that there was another stake organized in Colorado, and that was the Denver stake. So Pueblo, has had a lot of history with the church, and this is the very first church building. Yeah. Yes. That they had, and the Pueblo Branch. There's a picture of 1928 of the Pueblo Branch.
Is that in that same building?
Yes.
My dad was baptized in that building.
Oh, was he? Oh, how neat. Maybe your dad's, no, when was your dad born? Maybe your dad's born. 1920?
Maybe that's why I'm trying to.
He would have been 8 years old.
Then here's the
That
second.
was his baptism.
No.
Yeah, maybe it was. Then the next building that they had in Pueblo was this, and it's pretty run down now. We went by that, I just took that picture a week or two ago, and it's pretty run down. But they, no, this one is on East 4th and Kingston, and I think they used it until 1937.
Well, that might have been the one he was baptized. I don't remember, but I thought it was that little brown one with the wooden sides.
Oh, it might have been, yeah.
1920.
So is that
The pigeons really like this one.
Yeah, oh yeah, they're all on top, yeah.
We didn't build that one though. The church didn't build that one.
I didn't think it looked like a church that we would have built. Okay, so this is the next one, and this one was built and then dedicated in 1957. And can't remember. I know it was a couple of apostles that came and dedicated it. If I could see, I could tell you. But they used that, and that's where I went to church my whole life, from the time I was 3 when we moved to Pueblo until I was married. That was where I grew up and went to church, and that's where we had our stake conferences and things. And then Bev's dad, Maurice Stevenson, he was a bishop of the Pueblo Ward in the early 1950s. Oh, thank you. Now I don't remember.
Darlene, is that building, you call it the Constitution Building, is that still there?
It's still there.
It's right about
It was sold.
Really?
Yeah.
Constitution?
Yeah, it's still a pretty building, but
Yeah.
the church really kept the lawns up and everything else, and it's not like that anymore.
Yeah. I'll tell you kind of a story. My husband worked with a gentleman who belonged to the congregation that bought that church. And before they could use it, they had to have a special ceremony to get the evil spirits out. So, anyway. This is Maurice Stevenson. That's Bev's dad. And he was a bishop of the Pueblo Ward. And then this is Louis Butler. Does anybody remember Louis Butler? He was our first stake president for the Pueblo stake. So, back in the early 50s, the only members that were here in Rye was Grandma Gribble. This is Merle Ely's mother, and this is Merle Ely. That's Howie and Jill and Nelda, Sue, Jerry's mother. They were the only ones in the early 50s that were members of the church at that time, and they had come over from Pagosa during World War II and moved here. And then there were some other members a little bit later, the Boyds, and this was their home. And this house is on Zorn Road, so this is a new picture. So I don't know what it looked like back then, but they used to have cottage meetings there in that house. And that house is where my husband must have been really little because he used to make his mother upset because he used to try to see how many somersaults he could do during the sacrament prayer before anybody opened their eyes. And so he kind of distressed her a little bit. And then, a little bit later, still early 50s, Hiram and Opal and Ray and May, their families, they lived in Pueblo. But Ray and May, now correct me if I'm wrong, Betty, where are you? And Elaine too. If they actually were born though, weren't they up by Camp Crockett?
It was between Rye and Beulah, somewhere it was in a homestead.
Oh, okay.
Actually, I think it's on the Jackson property, yeah.
Yeah.
Because my great-grandpa's great-great-grandpa's graves are on the Jackson land.
Oh.
So that's where that
So they,
sawmill was. They ran a little sawmill on the Chilcot place. It was called the old Chilcot place. And
So-
I think it's on the Jackson land now. Because Brother Sturdivant took my dad and Hiram. My dad had been there several other times, but Hiram and my dad, they took Brother Sturdivant took them in there so that they could go see where that grave was.
Oh,
But it was
okay.
very overgrown, and Hiram
Yeah.
said it wasn't worth going back to.
yes.
But anyway, that's where it was on the Jackson land.
Oh, that's
Which is
interesting.
on the off the old Sandusville Road, off of the Burt Mill Road, somewhere in that
Yeah.
area.
So both of them had served in the Army during World War II as well. And then when they had their families and they had moved to Pueblo, they decided that they needed to come back to Rye and for the benefit of their families. And so that's what they did. They bought some land, and the land is where Delaine's house is, and Joel and Anacasia's, and all of that in between there. Is that right?
Yeah, and then where Heidi's living too.
Yeah, oh yeah, and where Heidi's at, yeah. So they came and they bought that land, but they didn't really have a place to live yet. So what they did was, at the time, Hiram was serving under Bishop Evenson in Pueblo as his ward clerk. And so they would come out to Rye, and they would meet in his little white house, first of all,